Hello and welcome to Forever Rugby Beyond Forever Sports, and we have a bit of an update from you after the first Springbok briefing of the year, where Rassie Erasmus addressed, as well as Mark addressed some of the media down in Cape Town ahead of the upcoming World Cup cycle, really. Rassie Erasmus did confirm the coaching staff as well. We've done a different video on that, going through the entire coaching staff, what their roles are for the next Rugby World Cup cycle. And a couple of interesting things he was asked about. Obviously, he was asked about, the idea of continuing with the Springboks and why, for example, he has chosen to keep going, where he could have potentially walked away, to the idea of walking away on top, for example. I think very much quite a key part of potentially, keeping your reputation intact. And sometimes you also need some fresh blood. But Rassie Erasmus fully believing that he has exactly that with his new coaches. But a very interesting part that is talked about, or asked about, is the Springbok captaincy the next 4 years. And that's what I want to sort of talk a little bit about today. Before I do that, please do smash like on the video. Please do subscribe to the channel as well. Right, so as we know, at the moment, one of the most legendary captains of all time in the rugby world, Kolisi, currently holds the mantle as captain of the Springboks. But is this going to be a permanent thing? Could we see this yet change? And I'll tell you why the question's even asked. Because Kolisi has made that move to Racing in 92, where Rassie Erasmus, by the way, confirmed that he is still available for the Springboks, as you'd imagine, much like a Cheslin Colby, for example, Pollard, your Aspervisas, your overseas-based players. He is still very much available to the Springboks. Kolisi has also mentioned himself that he still wants to play international rugby for as long as his body allows him. But I think he's probably also quite realistic about his chance of making the next World Cup. Potentially could, but obviously, he has had to come back from a pretty big knee injury, and whether that might have meant that a couple of years of his career has been shortened, we'll have to wait and find out. Now, the reason that the captaincy has come into debate is that traditionally, and this is something that Rassie Erasmus said from the beginning, and SA Rugby have almost wanted it, they've always wanted to have a South African-based player as the captain of the Springboks. And Kolisi is no longer a South African-based player. So, with regards to that sort of thinking and that kind of policy, that would actually rule him out of being the captain of the Springboks. However, that is not set in stone necessarily. It is a preference as opposed to a rule. But that is something that they have always wanted to do. And Rassie Erasmus has confirmed that it is not guaranteed that Kolisi will continue to lead the side this year, that he has not made a decision as of yet on what the captaincy situation will be. Now, obviously, Kolisi is your best candidate. He is the man that's led 2 back-to-back World Cups, for example, British National Lions Series victory. He is our captain. And, Rassie Erasmus was even making note of his really good form for Racing. He's playing some sensational rugby. The question comes now, does he continue as captain? Now, there are lots of pros and cons. Obviously, the pros means continuity, for example. From a leadership perspective, you don't get any better than Kolisi. We've also lost a big leader, for example, in Dwayne Vermeulen. And this is now start of a new World Cup cycle. I think new players are going to be coming in, for example. I think we'll probably start to see less of Billy LaRue, for example, which is a really big player as well, and a couple of experienced players sort of moving on. The issue, I suppose, comes with if you want to have a new World Cup, a new captain at the next World Cup, is it now time to start backing players now and start building a new leadership group for the next World Cup? And there's pros and cons. For example, Warren Gatland's trying to do that with Wales. He's handed Daph Jenkins the captaincy now for the Six Nations. When Jack Morgan comes back, I expect him to take the captaincy over. But he's gone with young captains who will be 3, 4, 5 years into their international career at the next World Cup and will be really settled and ready to lead their side to hopefully a good World Cup campaign. And, that's a very interesting way of looking at it. Italy did a similar thing, where they went and backed Michel Lamora as a young captain, really, really young captain. He's like, 22 years old or 23 years old when he was captain for the first time. And he's really grown into that role. So there are pros and cons to each. Now, the question becomes, if it's not going to be Kolisi, who is it? And because the reasoning, or part of the reasoning for removing him as captain would be maybe the SA-based part, in which case you then have to look at the SA-based players and you think, well, who is the next captain? Now, probably the main candidate that sort of jumps to the fore is an Eben Etzebeth, who did captain the side. I think it was last year. He captained on his 100th or around there. He did captain the box. I'm not sure if he is the right candidate moving forward, for example. I think there's certain players where the captaincy makes them better. And there's certain players who I think, you don't want to add to their workload. You just want to let them be the best players they can be and not have to worry about the captaincy, and I think that they tend to be leaders regardless of whether they've got the official sort of role or not. I tend to think that Eben Etzebeth is one of those players. Bongi Manambi is another candidate who we saw take over a lot of leadership responsibilities. However, there are now question marks regarding him, regarding the way he communicates with the rest, for example, the incident with Amy Barrett-Turan. So, suddenly people might be looking at a different option there. But if you look at your sort of the usual options, Andre Pollard is overseas based as well. So maybe he's somebody that doesn't really come to the conversation as of yet. But I think Steven Kitshoff, for example, if you look at sort of your local captains who's been captaining a lot, he captains, but obviously is also not locally based. The Kanya is probably the leading candidate regards to, somebody who's captains is captain of the Springboks. But Rassie Erasmus always liked somebody close to the scrum when it comes to the captaincy, or close to the forward, stuff like that, in a number 10, for example, or a forward. Somebody that's right the referee and can have the communication, which Lekanya isn't. As an outlet said, he does tend to sort of find himself out in sort of the fringes of the game. So lots of different candidates. Obviously, no decision made just yet. As soon as there is, we'll obviously update you. But what do you think? Who do you think the next candidate for the Springbok captain should and could be? Let me know what you think down in the comments below. Please do smash like on the video. Please do subscribe to the channel as well. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Steve. I'll chat to you soon.